For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with low and penetrating snow.
Hello, and welcome to the Snow Brains Podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge onto you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snow Brains. And when I was a kid, my family used to love to go to the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. I was way into checking out the live two-headed snake they had there that could eat and drink from both heads. One day, when I was about 7 years old, I really got into the alligator enclosure and ended up getting my head stuck in the railing above the alligators. I couldn't get it out. I was terrified. My mom got the security guards and they had to put butter behind my ears and on my head to get me out. I'll never forget those alligators. Today's Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Tamarack Resort. Nestled in the west central mountains of Idaho, Tamarack boasts 1,100 acres of terrain, 2,800 vertical feet, and an independent spirit and community vibe unmatched in the West. Today's episode of the Snow Brains podcast is brought to you by Killington. Make the most of any winter weekend. Head to Killington, the East Coast's biggest mountain resort. The Beast of the East has everything you need to enjoy a winter getaway, from the best ski and snowboard terrain to one-of-a-kind dining options and fabulous après-ski experiences. Vacation packages are available now. Visit killington.com to learn more. My guest today is Todd Offenbacher. Todd is one of the most amazing, hilarious, and entertaining people I know. He's a mountain guide, a badass rock climber with first ascents in Pakistan, China, Peru, Alaska, Antarctica, and more. He's a Lake Tahoe television personality for Outside TV. He used to be a bodybuilder at Muscle Beach in LA. He's currently in the middle of a community building passion project where he puts in climbing routes all over Lake Tahoe for beginner and intermediate climbers and kids. He's the founder of the Tahoe Adventure Film Festival. He's a professional speaker, and he's basically a stand-up comedian. No one has a bad time when Todd's around, and his storytelling is world class. Hello, Todd. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm really excited to be on your podcast. I'm excited for you guys putting out a podcast. It's really cool.
Yeah. So Todd, I just want to preface a little bit that we obviously know each other. We got a little bit of background. We've known each other since 2014 when I started guiding the Antarctica trip with you and Isaac's Expeditions. We both live in Tahoe, but I don't think we've ever seen each other outside of Antarctica, at the Arctic Circle, Tierra del Fuego in Argentina, and then a few random airports all over the world, which is funny because we spend a lot of time together because those Svalbard trips we go on, we're trapped in a small sailboat for a week plus. But I feel like I've known you since I moved to Tahoe in 2001. Because you were on Tahoe TV every day doing the weather and playing fun ski and snowboard clips. And we used to submit clips way back then. We were just out of college and you guys would play them sometimes and we'd be pumped. We'd be pumped, man. And so before we ever met, we always joked and called you Todd Offenbacher, a play off of your name, Offenbacher, because we thought it was clever and funny. And we always just noticed what the fuck, this guy, he's ripped. Why has he got huge? Like nobody in the mountains has big muscles. So that was always funny for us. Funny. So I just wanted to preface that for our audience. I think my relationship with you started way before our relationship together. And now that I have you on the podcast, that full circle is so cool to me. I looked up to you before I ever met you.
Oh, I appreciate that. It is one of the fun things about the TV thing because as you know, I love people and I love hearing people's story. I think everybody's got one. And being on that show for so long, man, over 20 years. Yesterday, I was at the grocery store and some old timer's in front of me and he turns around and he's like, oh, hey. And he's talking to me and I'm like, does he recognize me or is he just a friendly guy? Doesn't matter. We're talking. And then partway into it, he's like, he starts going, hey, that was really funny. That joke you did, about fat people and the way they walk or something. And I had a great conversation with the guy and he was a rice farmer in the Central Valley. So I was asking him about the water and, learning a little bit how many acres he had. And it was because he recognized me. I love it that I get to have a conversation with that with someone. And, I remember it. It was great.
And it wouldn't have happened otherwise. So
I don't think so.
So let's start with some rapid fire questions before digging down into your more interesting attributes. I'll ask some short questions here. If you can give concise answers, that's great. So here we go.
Okay.
How many days do you ski per year?
I like to say 100, but I'll bet it's 80.
Okay. And how many of those are backcountry days, you think?
I would say 80%.
And how many days do you climb per year? Because climbing is one of your big activities.
Again, I want to say 100 days, but it's probably more, it's probably in the same range as skiing, probably about 75, 80.
And what's your main goal when you go skiing and climbing?
One, to come home. Fred Becky, I remember, said to me one time, I was like, any secret to life? And he says, stay alive.
I like that. That's a really good. And Fred Becky's the legendary climber who has the first ascents all over the Western US and all over the world that you spend a lot of time with. And we'll get more into that later. What's your biggest accomplishment in skiing?
I think my biggest accomplishment in skiing is just like I see like the highest level pros in the world. I've been with them, get to go do trips with them and ski. And I think my biggest accomplishment is I'm like, I think I might be enjoying skiing even more than they are. You know, there's just no pressure on me. I'm just like, I think I might even enjoy it more than you.
I love that. And what's your biggest accomplishment in climbing?
You know, it's funny. Like we've done a lot of ascents around the world and first ascents and that kind of stuff. But it's at this point in my life, reflecting on that, I'd have to say a lot of the easy and moderate route development that I've done here around my community, because I just see the families, I see the kids, I see people getting introduced. Same thing. I go to the grocery store and someone says, hey man, I know you're Todd. I want to just thank you for those routes you put up. My wife did her first lead there. My kid is learning to climb there. It's crazy. You know, you're not going to get on the cover of a magazine putting those routes up, but they're the most rewarding. It really feels good. And I think, you know, maybe my grandkids will climb there. My daughter's already climbing there. So that feels really good.
This community passion project that you've done with putting in these routes is really special. And we're going to get a lot more into that in a little bit here. What's your biggest accomplishment in life?
I'd have to say my daughter. And it's one of those things that's interesting with me. I was married for 10 years. I'm still married, been married almost 20, going on 20. But I didn't have a kid until I was 49 years old. And I was going down the path of pursuing adventures, traveling the world, climbing and skiing, romantic trips with my wife, where we, you know, climb and ski or whatever, and then go have nice dinners and super fun. And I'm really glad that I didn't miss out on that, because it changed my whole perspective.
How do you define yourself?
I'm a climber. I'm a skier. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm involved in my community. Come to realize that the happiest people in the world and what makes me happy is my connection to my family, my friends, my community, and having a purpose. I've seen it with like the loose term of dirtbag, these climbers that just are doing nothing but climbing and traveling around. I see a sadness in people that don't have some other purpose, giving back. We've got to be giving back. You know, if your day, you don't do something that helps somebody else in your day, I think your day kind of sucks.
That's great insight. And, you know, I've read some recent studies talking about how money and all these things, they kind of plateau at a certain point, the amount of happiness that they give to you. But that connection with your community has huge implications and is so directly related to happiness.
Yeah, we can talk more about it. There's other examples, people I was around, mentors, and that I really saw that. And I think that also plays back to just how much I've gotten out of having a daughter, you know, that part of it, that purpose.
That's huge, man. And that's great advice. So I've talked to a few people about that. And so I appreciate it. And we'll dig back into that kind of stuff later and talk about mentors. Where's your favorite place to ski?
I think the Sierra Nevada, excuse me.
That's right. You get in trouble for that.
Oh yeah.
I've pissed people off by saying the Sierras.
It's real natural to say, right?
It's just normal. You pluralize mountain ranges.
Yeah. but I do. I love the Sierra for historically the snowpack that we get, the ruggedness of the mountains, the elevation of the mountains, and the weather pattern. It is incredible. Where's another mountain range that has as good a weather for, you know, skiing, climbing, year-round, spring skiing, whatever it is? It's incredible to get a big, giant dump, multiple feet of snow, and have bluebird cold conditions the next day. That Sierra cement thing people talk about, it happens, but the fat skis have made it where it's a non-issue.
I prefer wet snow. So it's all good. It sticks to the skis and it floats you.
and the stability of our snowpack. Again, historically speaking, it is a maritime snowpack, and the stability of it, and still incredibly remote. There's no trams and chairlifts and roads. I mean, it really, and is accessible with the trailheads. I think it's incredible.
I agree. The Sierra is absolutely spectacular for those reasons that you mentioned. And the remoteness. And when I go out there in the springtime, there's nobody out there.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you have any other favorite mountain ranges?
I sure do love those mountains of Antarctica, that Antarctica Peninsula. I've never experienced anything else like it. That windless bluebird day, the perfect day, good snow, you're on top of a peak, and you've got almost, you've got 180 degrees or 270 degrees of just ocean around you. And the mountains are rugged. There's no trees. There's just rock, snow, ice, and water. Andrew Isestark, who you know well, he made a good point. He says, people go to other mountain ranges or go wherever, and they might say, oh, what's it like there? Oh, it's like Alaska. Oh, it's like Chamonix. He says, no one goes anywhere else in the world and goes, it's like Antarctica. There's nowhere else like it. And until you go, you probably had the same experience going there. I was like, everyone says how beautiful it is. I can't quite picture what makes it so beautiful. There's only rock, snow, ice, and water. And you go there and there's nowhere else. It's like skiing on the moon. There's just nothing else like it. And my quote is, and I think it's valid. You can have your fact checkers check this one. I think more people have summited Mount Everest than have skied in Antarctica.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. And what you really notice is the 270 degrees of view of ocean all around you. And then the ocean is full of icebergs, huge ones, bigger than your ship.
You ever been up on one of those peaks and look and be up high, like above the ocean, and look down and be able, because you'll see breaching whales, orcas, different types of whales there, but where you can actually see the whale, like it's like almost like a drone shot. You can actually see the whale in the water because you're on a mountain. How many other places do you get that perspective? Ridiculous. And that's before you even ski down.
Well, thank you for that insight. Where's your favorite place to climb?
I think the Sierra Nevada. I think for those same reasons. There's Fred Beckey, who, if the listeners don't know who Fred Beckey is, there's a great film called Dirtbag: The Legend of Fred Beckey, and it's on Netflix. And it's a film I was very involved in. Fred was a really good friend. It was one of the most accomplished first ascent climbers for North America. And I was sitting one time with Fred, who is an expert in routes. He studied the American Alpine Journal. He wrote over a dozen books about climbing in different areas throughout North America. And he said to me, I think there's more good rock climbing in California than all the other states put together.
Whoa.
Yes, it's a huge statement, but it came from the right person. And when you start talking about Yosemite and Tuolumne and El Capitan and the Sierra and Joshua Tree, and, it's endless how much rock there is, and quality of rock, and big rock, and all different levels, almost all granite, which is, I think, the best rock. And you have good weather, which is really important for climbing. It's, you can climb when it's wet, but just not as hard. It's often very dry here.
That quote from Fred Beckey, that will resonate with our listeners. That is huge. And if you had to pick some other ranges to say that are your favorites, what other ones would you say?
Well, Chamonix is amazing, certainly, in the same sense, in that they have such variety and the access with the lifts. I said one thing I like about the Sierras is not having the lifts and telefreaks and stuff that take you and get that access there does make it incredibly special. And I think the most beautiful mountains, the most spectacular mountain range I ever spent time in was the Karakoram Mountains. I was in Pakistan for two different summer expeditions. And those are the largest mountains in the world, the most extreme, giant walls, granite walls, which is what we were going to climb. And then, of course, the massive, ice peaks, snow peaks, 8,000 meter peaks. I think there's more 8,000 meter peaks in the Karakoram than there are the Hindu Kush or the Himalaya. Maybe not combined, but I think that's right. I think the highest 8,000 meter peaks, I think, are in Pakistan.
Pakistan looks spectacular. Yeah, some of the videos that I've seen lately of people skiing there too. Just nuts. What would you do if you couldn't ski or climb?
Oh, man, that is a really good question. I'd probably just go do stand-up comedy.
Which I'd highly recommend you do that.
Or sit-down comedy, because if I couldn't ski or climb, I imagine I wouldn't bet a stand. Because I think if I could stand, I could still probably stand on two, get into my boots, have someone help me get into my boots and go ski downhill. That's a great question, though. But I don't know, maybe fly fish.
I love it, man. You already do stand-up comedy. We'll talk about it more. What scares you the most in the mountains?
I think what scares me the most in the mountains is the objective danger. I think you've probably seen it. I certainly have, where you do everything you can to mitigate the risk, but the mountains are dangerous. About this time last year, during the pandemic, Whitney Portal, which is the access point to get up to Mount Whitney here in the Sierra Nevada, we had a big earthquake, and massive boulders the size of buses came down into that parking lot, came through some campsites. I had some friends that were going to climb one route that day, and for whatever reason, they said, let's do this other route. And the route that they were going to do had a massive rock fall that went down it, all due to just an earthquake.
Whoa.
So the mountains, you can do as much mitigation of risk possible, and then they're dangerous. And I think you can never take that for granted, that the mountains are dangerous. You have to remember it every single time when you go into the mountains.
What do you love the most in the mountains?
Oh, I just love that perspective when you're in the mountains. I love the alpine. I love getting out of the trees. I'm not big into tree skiing. I love anytime I can get up above the tree line into the alpine, the views, that being able to look a long distance, just look across, looking down in there. What's that peak? What's that wall? What's that lake down there? Every time I look across the mountains that way, it feels like, we got to go there. It just feels like there's so much to do still. And usually they're big days, when you're in the Sierra, you're having a big day, but you get to the top of some peak there, some 14er, and you're looking off to the west. We usually access from the east. You're looking off to the west, just going, wow, what's all that stuff back there? I love just a day spent in the mountains for that. The view, the terrain, the lack of people. I love it.
I think of it as mental gluttony. You get up high and it's something that makes you feel so good.
Yes.
And then you look out and there's tons more of this thing that makes you feel so good. And just your mind just flips out. I love that. I know what you're talking about. And that's one of my favorite reasons to be in the mountain as well.
It's hard to articulate, but it is. It's a feeling you get that just you can't beat.
What's the funniest accident you've had in the mountains?
I wasn't there on this one. There's a guy, we'll just call him the avocado.
Okay, that's a good start.
We'll call him the angry avocado. And he was, I believe it was on Denali, and had the big, like the one piece kind of down suit. And, it's snowing. It's difficult to go to the bathroom to take a poo when you're in the mountains. And I think this was a brand new, like onesie down high altitude suit. And he went out to do his business and, pulled it down around his ankles. Really difficult to go number two in a one piece. And upon, doing his business, realized he had actually shat in the hood of his jacket, and there's no laundromat up there. There's no nothing. I thought that story was really good. Just like, and then of course you're almost like a leper then to the guys in the tent, anybody else you have to be around, it immediately probably froze up and
oh God, you have to cut it off or something. I mean, that is like probably, cancer.
Yeah, exactly. It probably got under the shoulder part of it. It was just, I thought that was a really, like the kind of thing, like you could almost have like a nightmare about.
Oh, it's so bad. I think one of McLean's stories was like that too. And it's something about using a spatula to clean the poo off the clothing. And the rest of the expedition, it's just not good. Nobody likes you.
Yeah.
What's the scariest accident you've had in the mountains?
When you and I were in Svalbard, and we were climbing up this peak. It was beautiful. It was starting to warm up. All the signs, you can hear all the signs now. But it was sunny. It was windless. It was beautiful. The ocean was down there. The sailboat was there. And I turned around and I was like, I got to get a picture. And I didn't just like blindly go out. I said, take your time, look around. Oh, that's a good, safe place to walk. In fact, where I see to walk, I see faint reindeer tracks.
I remember that.
Yep. And I walked out. I only walked like 15 on skis, on my skins. And I walked out that 15 feet. And when I rotated my skis around to turn to take the picture, it was just a trap door. And all of a sudden I was just instantly in darkness and in free fall. And then I was still in free fall. And I know what a long fall feels like from climbing. It's spooky. Right. Like, whoa, is this rope going to catch? I knew I didn't have a rope on. Oh. And I know I must have told you this, but I had the clearest thought of, oh, this is how I die.
Whoa.
I've had it another time, but that was really intense. I suspect I went through some snow bridges because when I did finally hit, I landed perfectly on my pack. I had a pretty big pack, but I landed perfectly on that on a snow bridge and was in complete darkness there. Didn't have much clothing on because it was hot above and it was really cold in there. And yeah, we started, I was trying to get on the radio and talk to McLean, and I was trying to be cool. And then I was like, I better get an ice screw. I had some good clean ice on both sides of me. I was kind of buried in the snow. I had to kind of clear my face at first. A bunch of snow landed on my face, but then I had to kind of, my ice screws that were kind of behind me on my harness, the way I'd fallen, and I was in all this snow. So I started kind of digging behind me into the snow to get to my ice screws. And as my eyes, I think, were starting to adjust in the blackness, I could see that this thing opened up into just this massive cavern with no bottom to it below me. And then I was kind of torn. Well, should I keep digging to get these ice screws out, or should I just, I'm wedged in here. I'm probably going to be fine. I took my ski poles and put them across. I didn't continue digging out compromising the snow behind me.
Right.
And got on the radio. And of course, Andrew McLean, who's been on your podcast, and we all know, hopefully. And the whole time, so I'd been talking to him on the radio. Every time I'd call him on the radio, I'd go, Dr. McLean, like they would like in a hospital or something. And I remember just being like, it was pretty dramatic situation, but I remember just being, I got to be cool. And this was day one with those clients. They hadn't even skied down a hill yet. This is the first thing we're going to do.
God.
And I just said, hey, if you can hear me, I don't think I'm injured, but I definitely need a rope to get out of here. And I'll just kind of sit and wait. And then you guys got me a rope down to me. That's how I feel like we kind of know the distance, because I forget whatever the rope length was, probably a 30-meter line.
You were deep. You were a solid 50 feet in there.
Yeah, a solid 50, maybe more.
What hit me the most was your Bugs Bunny mark. When Bugs Bunny goes through a brick wall, there was hand marks where you had tried to hold on. And so when the client showed me, that's where he went. I went and looked. Oh my God! I thought you were just a goner, man. When I saw that, it was just a black hole.
Yep, that was really intense.
I know it felt good to clip into that rope.
And then it wasn't until I got out of Svalbard, was done with the guiding, that trip was over, that I really started to have some of the effects of what I'm sure is short-term PTSD.
Oh, for sure.
I was hyper vigilant with safety. I remember I went and met my wife and daughter in Croatia to go climbing, and I just didn't have any desire. I didn't want to go climbing. I was worried about rocks falling from above to hit my family. I remember standing on a street corner and I would like pull them in closer from the cars going by. I felt very vigilant and intense, and it was dark. I think I certainly me going through an experience like that where you have a point to go, oh, this is it. Not many days go by that I don't think about that. And so often I'll be sitting there with my daughter or having a good time or doing something great, just enjoying life, and think, God, all those days I came so close to missing between that day, whatever day that was when we were in Svalbard together and I did that, all the things I've done, visiting with friends and family and meals and climbing and skiing and laughs and cries and all that stuff. I think about it. So it had a good impact. You have to it's like the friends we lose in the mountains. I'm always like, the sadness is so obvious. The trauma from it was obvious to me, but I'm like, I got to turn this into doing good things. And you've heard me. I always say, never waste a day. That's my closing statement on the TV show. Never waste a day. And it comes from experiences like that and our friends that aren't here anymore.
I love that. And I love your perspective on that, because I've not heard that before. Someone saying, I thought from this dangerous accident that I had, I could have died up till this point in my life. All these days I would have missed out on. Man. That is so powerful. That's so profound. And it's so true. And we've all had these scary accidents in the mountains, and you think, God, I would have missed out on meeting this person or doing this thing or seeing my child evolve. And that is really powerful and makes you appreciate every single day. And on that note, you mentioned losing friends in the mountains. I ask everybody in the podcast this because I think it's really interesting and important for us all to learn. How many friends have you lost in the mountains?
Man, I have very consciously not counted them.
Good.
I've made a very conscious effort to not add them up. I've heard people throw numbers out, and I understand everybody deals with it differently, but I've made a very conscious, and it is dramatic. It's just so many, way too many. people that all those days, lost that we just talked about. So I don't know. Been around for some of them, been present for some. And again, it's that never waste a day. I think that for my friends, every time we lose one, it's that many that like you call and you've got a tone in your voice. It scares me. You know what I mean? Or I call you with a tone like, hey man, how's it going? I got some bad news. Like, what it is.
Oh yeah. That's rough.
Too many.
I even lost my brother skiing when I was a kid. And I think about that all the time. I just think about, my brother would have loved this, even these tough things, who cares? Like, especially when I'm stranded on the side of the road somewhere in a weird country and the bus is not coming. And you realize this is going to be a rough 24 hours. I always think, oh man, these people that we lost would kill to be here. Yeah. They would just, and that cheers me up a ton.
I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that about your brother. It's amazing with all like the deep conversations I feel like we've had, because these trips, you're just so, you're just so forced to talk and discuss and share and open up. You can only imagine how heavy that one is. So I'm glad you take something positive from it all the time.
Hugely profound, big breakthrough moment for me in my life, big challenge, and really, really, really defined who I am today. And like you, when we lose these friends, I think it changes us, and it can make us better. That's for sure.
Yep.
Have you ever been hurt while skiing or climbing?
Yeah, I've been hit with a rock here and there climbing. Little injuries, cuts, bruises, nothing. Always recovered. But the interesting thing was the second week in Svalbard. So the way we do these trips in Svalbard, we do 8 days with guests. Take those guests to the airport, and then we pick up the next group of guests. Well, that incident with the crevasse, that was my second week up there. The week before, I had a full ACL tear, complete ACL tear.
Right.
Remember?
I forgot about that. I do remember now.
And that was a weird one because you had like maybe 2 centimeters of penetration with your skis. If you ski too fast, they'd really vibrate, but you could get an edge. That kind of snow. But I just went off the cornice about 3 feet, and I was going to stomp it and just see if I could give it a hard ass ski cut. And I had a good safe spot to go to. And I jumped off, and my skis didn't penetrate, and it just shot me back. Classic mechanism for the ACL. I heard it, felt it. I was just like, oh fuck, man, and kind of ski down. And then I was able to still ski on it. It hurt like hell.
God dang.
I think I finished that day out, and I came back and I was like, Andrew, I think I blew my ACL. I heard it. And Andrew and I are like, why isn't there like that test where you can kind of like, you sit down and put your leg at a 90 degree, and then you pull on the calf, pull it out. So we did it, and it like really moved a lot.
Oh God.
I was like, I don't know, here, do the other one. The other one was pretty tight, And the next day I got up, it was swollen, but not too bad. And I just sucked it up, and I skied the rest of that trip. But that whole rest of that week, I skied on it.
And the next week,
and then fell in the crevasse. So I know it makes you cringe.
God. Well, yeah, that's those of us who have blown our ACLs before. Oh man, just when you start saying it like that,
I know.
And the way my knee moved without an ACL was just absolutely wrong. You've been on skiing and climbing trips all over the world. Which ones stand out? The wild foreign trips that you've been on skiing and climbing.
For climbing, definitely the Pakistan trips. The culture there, the mountains there, the primitive culture that exists up there in the Karakoram Mountains. That the Pakistani people that live in that part of the Karakoram, we were north of Skardu, which is a big jump off point for like a lot of the 8,000 meter peaks. And just that, the mountains were amazing. The climbing, there was so many big, giant, massive Yosemite style or bigger objectives that we were climbing, doing first ascents were very exciting. But the people, I think about them all the time. It was amazing. The Pashtun-Wali, I think it's called, is the way that they greet visitors or someone that's just passing through. But they'd invite you in for like goat yogurt and a tea. And I remember thinking, like, what do they want? Money? Or like, what's the hook here? You probably want to sell. And it was just the way they treated you. And I think about it. I will always think about it, especially living in a resort town, Tahoe, all the visitors. I hear people talk about, go home, go back to the bay. People, get tired of the visitors. And I get it. I, of course, get it. We all get it. But I try to teach my daughter it too. There's something about being a really good host to someone visiting that is so important. And those people taught me that. I can remember like we take a break with all these porters carrying our stuff. We might have as many as 15, 16 porters carrying our stuff, all Muslim Pakistani people. And all of a sudden they just all disappeared. I'm like, where the fuck did they, where's everybody? You can see the packs were still sitting there. They didn't steal our stuff. And they would go off however many times a day it was, twice, 3 times a day, face towards Mecca and pray to Allah. And I was impressed with that they never once tried to convert me into being a Muslim. They didn't pat themselves on the back like, look, I'm going to church. I pray this many times a day. It was a very personal thing. And I really admired that. Yeah, just having grown up with a different impression of that. And I was like, I was impressed with their culture and their commitment to their God and just their way of life, very primitive. But I also said, and I said this in my presentations about Pakistan, on a good day in Pakistan, you get served 3 cups of tea. And the premise of that book, 3 cups of tea, is that, the first cup of tea is for any visitor. The second one is they consider you a friend. The third cup of tea is they consider you family. So I'd say on a good day, you get served 3 cups of tea. And on a bad day, you could get your head cut off. Because there's a very bad element that, exists in that part of the world, and certainly in Pakistan, in certain parts of Pakistan. And we got a bad element that exists in this country too, and all over the world. So it isn't isolated just to them. But that experience I would love to go back. It does feel dangerous to me, but I would love to go back.
Well, there's something about that balance too of danger and spectacular culture that is very attractive as well.
Yes.
Where would you not go back to?
The first thing comes to mind for me is Athens, Greece.
Oh yeah, okay, tell.
I did a family climbing trip. My family, my wife and daughter and I, and Tommy Caldwell, his wife, and his son before his daughter was born.
And Tommy's a famous rock climber, big mountain rock climber.
But we ultimately ended up back in Athens, and every experience, like I got the crazy shakedown from the taxi driver. We got off a ferry in Athens, and the guy was trying to shake me down for extra money and all this stuff. And it was the first time I was feeling really desperate. He was really being aggressive and wasn't letting it go. He wanted more money from me than we agreed on. We've all been in that situation. Then we went out and I am not particular about my food, but I'm not. I can eat anything. I can eat anywhere. I'm fine. I'm not real picky. It was absolutely it was just like the place we ended up with. So that was the next thing. Then there was people had needles in their arm doing drugs. Like we walked past. I don't know that it's a reflection of all of Athens, but that particular trip, just the way that we had the worst experience. So I would not go back to Athens.
So Athens, Greece, off the list.
Yeah, Athens, Greece will not go back. Maybe a layover at the airport at best.
What challenges you the most intellectually on a daily basis?
I think trying to figure out how to be the best dad I can be intellectually, just trying to be like, well, what's the message here? What's the teachable moment here? I want to give her enough space to make her own mistakes there. Just trying to really think 2 steps ahead. And, she's got her own way of doing things. I want her to do that, but I want to just do the best job I possibly can. One thing about having a kid is it makes you reflect on your own parents and the lessons you learned or the stuff you're like, God, I wish they'd have told me about this. I didn't know this part of life that, man, it took me however many years, most of my life to figure out this one simple thing, like respect. People talk about respect gets respect, but at some point in my life, I started realizing all the issues, all the arguments, all the disagreements, all the seem to come out of some level of just someone not being respected. So there's teachable moments everywhere. And I'm just constantly trying to be more aware of lessons in life and pass them on to my daughter and learn them myself. One of the best ways I've found in learning, guiding is wonderful that way. And when you're teaching other people, it's making you learn so much too. The questions the clients, the guests ask, just the scenarios you end up in, it's always teaching us. There's always, every day I'm trying to learn something new.
I like that. I like your message about respect. I'm going to remember that. That's good. I haven't articulated it that way in my mind before. Who has inspired you the most in your life?
Man, I think it's just a combination of so many people. My dad was a good inspiration of what hard work, what dedication, what strong mindset looks like. Not just telling me, but leading through example. He was a tough love kind of dad. Yeah, he was really good that way of just teaching me discipline. He was really good about teaching me discipline. My brother, I have a half brother. We didn't grow up in the same house, but we're really close. He did 30 years on a SWAT team back in Maryland. He has incredible mindset. I think having a really strong mindset and understanding how powerful your mind is and how much your attitude makes a difference, that I think I've thanked my dad for how I think that's made my life so much easier, having discipline. Because I feel like you can get really motivated by listening to a podcast or reading a book or seeing a movie or just wake up motivated and go do a hard workout or go do a big ski or go do whatever it is. But it's the discipline that just keeps you driving at it, doing it. Like, I don't feel like going to the gym today. I don't feel it. But you have the discipline. I think it's an incredible strength to have in your arsenal. Have a really strong mindset. So my dad and my brother were both really good at, and continue to be really good. My brother's gone through a horrible type of terminal cancer, and then a secondary.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had to retire from the SWAT team. He had an amazing career. He just wrote a book that's on Amazon called "Failure's Not an Option," and his last name is Jeff Nice.
Okay.
So Officer Nice.
I love that.
So there's some good one, But he's a hard rock, man. He's a tough dude. He's got all the tactical training and 5,000, raids and hostage situations and barricade situations. His book's really incredible, but it talks a lot about his mindset and discipline. And he continues to kick this cancer's ass by just he has outlived everything they said he could do. He's got a good quality of life, and it just blows my mind, because it's one thing, I think, to go, like, I always knew he was a tough ass warrior and could win the battles he wanted to be in. He didn't pick that battle. I think that's a really tough, I cannot even begin to imagine. And he's approached it the same way he approached everything else in his life. And it's really a lesson.
That's great. Well, it sounds like some mentorship there, but did you ever have a mentor through your process of growing up and starting these careers? Yeah.
I mean, when I started the health club business and that whole deal, my dad was certainly a mentor. He had a patio furniture business, Offenbacher Pool and Patio, and had been very successful with that, with several stores. And I'd watch that. I was never really that drawn to that business, but I did see what the hard work, what the discipline, what just showing up every day and what that looked like. So that was really helpful. And then when I got into climbing, I had a guy named Howard Doyle. He was kind of a legend in that area back in West Virginia, where I was climbing, had put up a lot of routes and knew a lot, had seen a lot. And he was a good mentor. I had another one, Gene Kistler, who was from the New River Gorge area. And him and another guy, Eddie Bagoon, helped teach me how to put up first ascents. There it was just, a half a rope length. You'd go up maybe a couple rope lengths sometimes, but, just how to put the bolts in, where to look, how to see a line in the rock, how to protect it. A little bit different ethics there. It was a lot more than about it was often climbing originally was more like it was like the experience for the climber to be bold, to kind of make a statement like, oh man, he didn't put a bolt for 50 feet. This is really a scary route. It's dangerous to do. They had a good balance of that they taught me. And then that's what really got me fired up to be like, oh, okay, now I know how to put the bolts in. I know how to do this. I know how to see the line. I know how to figure out and unlock the climb to get up it. I just got enamored with going to the bigger mountains in the world and climbing things that hadn't been unclimbed. Not to stick a flag on top of it or to say I did it. I just absolutely, to this day, love the adventure of climbing up where someone hasn't been before, going where someone hasn't been. And then the big secret was that, I started seeing these other cultures and different way of looking at the world, and, it knocked away a lot of prejudices I probably had grown up with. And that has been the biggest part of traveling on these climbing expeditions is the people. It always ends up being about the people. It sounds cliche, but I think on the deathbed, you're not like, remember that one line we skied? It's like, man, you're a great friend. And I appreciate all the time we had, aside from just the sliding over snow or climbing up a rock.
That was profound, Todd. You nailed that. Wow. I am really jealous of your experience in Pakistan. I would love to see that culture. That's really cool. So Todd, one of the most interesting things, I don't know, I take it back. the most interesting thing about you to me is that you were once a bodybuilder, like fully jacked, huge, greased up in a bikini bottom doing these competitions. So I just don't understand at all. So you got to tell me, how the hell did this happen? How did you become a bodybuilder?
Yeah, man, as a kid, I grew up wrestling, playing football. My dad was real into weightlifting. My dad was, he's in the Hall of Fame at University of Maryland as a wrestler. He was a very successful wrestler. Yeah, super badass. My dad was a really tough wrestler, very successful. But, he had weights at the house. He got me into weightlifting. I'm not a very big guy, and playing football and wrestling, being stronger and that sort of stuff. I'm not very tall. I wasn't a very big kid. And then my brother came over one day and he had this book called Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I can't tell you what it was, but the way it looked, back then, that was like probably more like from the 70s. That book was just that lifestyle and the whole, I was hooked, and I started lifting weights really hard.
And how old were you?
I probably started lifting when I was like 15, totally transformed that next year when I came back, like my junior year in high school. People were like, damn, like what happened to you? I lifted hard. You had weights in the basement and, a bunch of just barbells and dumbbells, but I went off. My dad kind of knew what to do. And then I started competing. Like when I think I did my first one, I was like 16, 17, did well. And then I went on and took runner up in the Teenage Mr. America when I was 18. And then continued on. So I did the classic, and this is, you got to remember, this is the 80s too. And bodybuilding in the 80s was like a hip thing. It really
cool.
was. It was iconic then. And I did the classic. I went out to train for the Teenage Mr. America. I went out to Venice Beach, drove out with a buddy with almost no money, bought cans of tuna, ate them, worked out twice a week, hung out on the beach. Just like the classic period of that bodybuilding. Was around Schwarzenegger and some of those guys back then. Competed all the way up into, I did a lot of like big runner-ups. Like I took 2 years in a row, I took runner-up in the Mr. USA. That was probably the highest level I got to. But there was just a point in that sport, just genetics really ultimately plays in at the highest level. I took it pretty far as I could, and enjoyed it. And probably the biggest takeaway was I did get the discipline.
And it sounds like it was a really rowdy part of your life that, you were working out hard. You were in LA. It sounds like you were 19, 20, 21.
Yeah, man.
Young kid. Sounds like at some point you mentioned maybe dating a playmate,
Yeah.
Tell us something, like what's a funny, great, exciting story from back in that time? It sounds like a really crazy, wild time in your life.
It was great, man. There was, we were at Venice Beach. We worked out at Gold's Gym. I lived down there. I lived in Santa Monica. I lived in Venice a little bit and then over to Santa Monica. But there were girls, I think, that just came from around the world to go to Venice Beach and like try to find a bodybuilder. Like it was a weird phenomena. People would come up and just start grabbing your muscles and feeling them, kind of like you were Goofy or Mickey Mouse at Disney. Like, oh, there he is. There's one, and get pictures with you and stuff. So that was a pretty wild time. I did date a girl named Kathy Clark that was a penthouse centerfold for a while. She was a really sweet girl from the Midwest, and I think that's what you're referencing there. But a really good one was, there was this one time I was dating this girl, and I wish I could remember her name because I always wondered what happened to her. But she was doing the stand-up comedy thing. And we only went out a few times, but she was an Italian girl. And in doing so, we went to the gym. She like, take me to the gym. Show me what to do at the gym. So I went to the gym with her. And at the time, I'd gotten in a fight at Gold's Gym, a fist fight there. I was pretty rowdy back in the day. That was probably something over respect or something.
Yeah.
But I got in a fight and I got kicked out of Gold's Gym for a period of time. And I had to go over to what's called World Gym. Well, Joe Golds had started Gold's Gym. He sold it and created the other franchise called World Gym. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was tied into that in the early days. He's an icon in the bodybuilding world. So I go to World Gym with this girl, and there's a type of leg press where you sit down on an angled bench. You put your feet on this thing and you unlock it, and then you can push up and down. And as you do, like, your knees come into your chest, and then you push out with these weights, and you can, load it up with as many of one of those like manhole cover size 45-pound plates. And I was doing those, and then I was showing her how to do it. Well, she had really big breasts, and I was having her on the leg press. So every time her knees came down, it kind of pressed into her boobs. Well, Schwarzenegger walks in the gym, and when he walked in, that guy was just bigger than life. He was like, it was during his Conan days, like when he was filming the Conan movies. And he walks in and he's kind of, joking with everybody. Yeah, how you doing, Joe? It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm working on the film. I just maybe get a quick workout in today. He comes over and he's, how you doing? And I said, I'm doing good. And he said, oh, you got a new training partner? And I said, yeah. And he's standing over her as she's doing these leg press. Her knees are coming into her boobs. And he's looking kind of like at her boobs as she's doing it and kind of like, winking at me or whatever. While she's doing the exercise, he says, yeah, maybe you need to get her to teach you her chest routine. It would be good for you. She finishes the exercise, puts the weights down and looks up at Schwarzenegger. And without hesitation, she goes, oh my God, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I see you're still parting your teeth in the middle.
Oh,
and the whole gym, because everyone's hanging on every word he says, the whole gym fell apart laughing. Joe Golds was crying, laughing. He's like, yeah, you got yourself a real tiger here. You better be careful with this one.
Oh, that's so good.
It was
I love that she did that.
It was such a good line on her part, and it was a different time, people behaved like that in the gym. I mean, it would be much less acceptable today, but great one-liner from her. Really smooth.
That is strong. I hope she still tells that story.
I bet she does too.
I bet she does. Yeah.
That was a good one.
Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Killington. The eyes of the winter sports world will be on Killington Resort this Thanksgiving weekend as the Beast of the East hosts the Homelight Killington Cup. It's a weekend full of Audi FIS Ski World Cup racing, outstanding musical entertainment, and more. Watch women from more than 20 nations compete in giant slalom and slalom and enjoy concerts from renowned artists OAR, DJ Z-Trip, and G-Love. I love G-Love. Learn more and purchase tickets at killington.com/World Cup. Today's Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Tamarack Resort. You might come to Tamarack for the views that unfold across the valley or the unspoiled terrain and vast open bowls. Maybe you'll come to uncover a place that's a little different, that's down to earth and at home on the path less traveled. But we know you'll come back because there's a community of people at Tamarack who make you feel like you're in the right place at the right time.
How do you think, that is so odd and so different and so esoteric to be a bodybuilder and then to move on and become a rock climbing, person that does first ascents all over the world and a mountain guide and skiing and all this. How do you think your bodybuilding career helped you in the next phase of your life?
I think certainly it was through discipline, just what you learn in bodybuilding, the diet, the training, the discipline. Some days you're motivated, the days you're not. It just takes pure discipline to just stick it out and not give up, not quit, press through, push through pain, for the bigger reward down the road. And the mountains are very much the same. It was really, I got taken climbing one time and I was kind of transitioning out of bodybuilding and started the health club. Somebody took me one time and I was scared. I didn't understand what it was. I was frightened the whole time up. And I stood up on top of this peak after I successfully got to the top. It was in Red Rocks, Nevada, outside of Las Vegas. And I can remember going back to our point about the mountains, that view across Red Rocks is spectacular. I had overcome this fear. I'd worked through it. The adrenaline that surged was very real. My fear was I was afraid if I fell, I would die. I didn't trust the rope. I didn't trust the equipment. I didn't understand the systems. And I was hooked and was I've got to learn how to do this. And I just started pursuing, how do I learn about climbing? It was before the internet. How do I do it? I was getting books, how to climb. Going to West Virginia, which was several, maybe 3 hours to Seneca Rocks, West Virginia from where I lived, 5 hours to the New River Gorge. Now, even looking back, the best move I ever made in my life was coming out to Lake Tahoe. I wanted to come to California for all those reasons we talked about. California, the Sierra Nevada being amazing. I wanted to move to Mammoth, just location-wise, such a great one. But I couldn't figure out how to make a living there. I was trying to figure out. So ultimately, it ended up being Tahoe. I'd come here as a kid skiing with my family.
Oh, wow.
And it was came here and was oh, there's a lot more opportunity. There's a lot of things and can't imagine living anywhere else other than the mountains.
I love it, man. And this timeline seems insane. It's you got into bodybuilding when you're 15, 16 years old. You're competing at a very high level just after high school. You moved out to Venice Beach in LA and California. And then you got into rock climbing. What were the ages? So you started rock climbing or started rock climbing when?
Yeah, so I think, I got into bodybuilding. I started lifting weights around 15, started competing 17 to probably about maybe the age of 26 or so.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere.
Long time.
Yeah, I did. I had a pretty good run. I probably did 10 years and I competed every single year.
Wow.
I won like Mr. Virginia and some other smaller, they had all these different titles, whatever. But then I opened up that health club and at like about the age of 28, I believe. And that was going well. Financially was doing well. We had about 2,000 members. I was enjoying it. I was kind of going down the same path my dad had. We had this great facility. I'd gotten into martial arts. We had a little martial arts studio. I had an amazing mentor there, George Thanos, who was a 9th or 10th degree black belt. He's in the Taekwondo Hall of Fame, just an amazing friend, but was learning through him. And that was I was kind of going that martial arts direction. And then I got taken climbing. So
around 30 or so, you started climbing.
Yeah, 29 probably.
Okay.
And then I went crazy. I just was climbing my ass off and getting better. I was strong. I was fit. I was learning it. I had those good mentors I mentioned. And then I think at about the age of about 34, I was able to sell the gym to my partner. I sold out to him and just packed up everything, man. I sold my condo. I sold my gym. I had this big ring of keys, a key to this locker, a key to this door, a key to, my house, to my, I remember just getting rid of that whole thing, just being like, I'm packed everything up in a Toyota truck, drove cross country. And it was a high anxiety leaving. My mom and dad were back there. My brother was a police officer community. I knew everybody from this gym. The kids I grew up with were still around, a lot of them. Just started a whole new thing because I knew I was in love with the mountains and needed to pursue it. And I struggled at first year just trying to figure out, I was that East Coast kid coming here just fired up and full of energy and, you can't do that. You got to do it this way. And it's like, yeah, sure I can. I can go ski in the morning and climb in the afternoon and then work at night. Sure I can. Yeah.
Oh, I love it, man. Having that, relatively rigid, normalized American lifestyle, walking away from it completely, which very few people can do, to follow basically a lifestyle is what it sounds like. You wanted that other lifestyle. And what I love is, I think it was Chris McNamara was telling our friend Stein about you. He said that, Todd really stuck out, especially in Yosemite when you started doing the big walls, because here's this guy who's totally jacked, which is not the climbing body type. The climbing body type is almost skin and bone and just enough muscle to pull up.
Right.
These skinny, strong, wiry guys. Here you come, bulky, jacked guy. Supposedly, it sounds like you were wearing spandex even.
Yeah, it was still a little popular in the climbing realm then, but
good.
I might have held on to it a little too long.
This guy in spandex, totally jacked. No one else looks like you. Totally different attitude. What was that like being that different guy?
Well, when you're that guy, you don't know the difference. You're just like, I don't know. Like, people would always be like, damn, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, I just been climbing, like that muscle, like it, I still was working out and stuff, but I was trying to apply it to climbing. And yeah, it was, I definitely looked different than the mold. And
you lost your mind. I mean, it sounded like you lost your mind. You
I did.
Moved out here for rock climbing. You were this, totally different person, especially different body style, body type. And then, how did that transition happen? It sounds like you went from your first ever climbing to moving out to Tahoe. And then you're on, doing first ascents in Pakistan, Peru, China, Thailand, Canada, Alaska, Antarctica, all around the US. What was that transition like?
So before I'd moved out, I'd made a few trips from the East Coast, out to climb El Capitan. Then I'd go back home. And every time I'd get in the car to go back to the airport, whether it was a San Francisco airport or Reno airport, leaving Yosemite, I was driving back 3-week trip. I'd be like, man, I'm going the wrong way. Why am I going back what am I doing going back to the East Coast? So I'd done some bigger trips. I'd gone to the Bugaboos of British Columbia.
Oh, wow.
And climbed up there and actually done a few first ascents. But I wanted to kind of sell my assets, that health club, my condo, and move out. And I wanted to just be doing expeditions every year. That's what I wanted to be doing, climbing a bunch, applying myself to the mountains, seeing how much I could get done. And that's exactly what I did when I moved out here. I ran into, started meeting people in the community, and really important in climbing was one thing I did is I had a climbing partner, Nils Davis, that at the time we had very similar goals of wanting to travel, wanting to go put up routes, wanting to climb, wanting to do things in Yosemite, some of the same projects. And it really does take that in climbing because, we had like the same pattern. We knew each other. We enjoyed each other's time. We climbed well together. We balanced each other well. And so I did a lot of those trips with him to Peru, to a couple of trips to Pakistan with him. I went back to the Bugaboos with him and did some, notable ascents. It's all relative, really. But that was really important, was having one really, I tell my young buddies, I'm like, you got to have that one
key
partner. And I always ask them too, when you're like, what's your goal in climbing? Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to free climb something on El Cap? Do you want to put up new routes? Do you want, figure it out now, dude, because every year of your life is going to get a little bit more complicated. It's going to be a little bit harder to do those things. And I can tell you now, at 58 years old with a 9-year-old daughter and a 20-year marriage, my young friends, man, have a plan, start, doing it. Like the one thing friends like, wait, how is it you go? People must ask you this all the time.
Oh yeah.
I want to travel more. How do I go travel? I'm like, book the trip right now. Go online and book that trip. Go see that other culture, because it'll make you, if you do enjoy it like we do, it'll make you book the next trip and the next one. But you got to put it on the calendar, just like us taking the time today to do this podcast at this time. I didn't go climbing this afternoon. It's like, no, I'm talking to Miles. I'm talking to Snowbrain's audience. This is what we're doing. You've got to do that.
And we appreciate you being here. I always say 90% of life is showing up.
Yeah.
So if you just show up, the rest falls into place. The connections happen. The pieces fall into the right spots. And yeah, there'll be rough patches, but the rough patches are great too.
Yeah, you got to be there to make it happen. It's like just putting up a new route. I mean, you look and you kind of see the line, you get an idea, but you don't know what's up there. And you just commit to it and you start just breaking it down one move at a time. It looks too big. I can't picture us climbing this whole thing. This has already been so much hard work. But, I can make another move. I can do another pitch. I can, God, I feel like going down. I'm scared. It's just great. You just keep pushing on and all of a sudden, you figured it out, you get to the top, that builds your confidence. You've learned a lot. You've got a lot more experience. You go to the next one, you learn more. Life's the same way.
Absolutely. And in that vein, I really want to talk about your passion project that you have going right now, is that you've been, and I might not understand this perfectly, but you've been putting up bolted climbing routes in South Lake Tahoe for quite a while. And it sounds like your focus has been on beginner, intermediate, basically getting people to work up into a higher level of climbing. And so I don't want to even preface this too much, because I want to hear it from you. So tell me about what you're doing here. And our good friends Stein and Eric, they're making a movie about what you've done with this, about what you've done with your life, and then how you're creating this great community project. And I'm really excited and curious to hear more.
Yeah, the film project by Intrepid, those guys working on that, the film's called The Crux, is just super humbling, and it's such an honor to hey, we think your story is worth telling. And it's a different story. It isn't. There was a period we were doing what we were doing, that you are what you've done or what you do, it's one of those things. But as time evolved and went on, and I, started a family, I've got a 9-year-old daughter now. Early on, when my daughter, and I was putting up routes when I moved here, I was into doing what I was doing back on the East Coast, finding an area, and, sometimes it's just cragging. You go up, you get an anchor, you come back down. It's a 5'11", it's a 5'12", it's a 5'10", it's whatever. But then once I had a daughter, we had a trip planned to go stay at Stefan Palm's house. Stefan Palm.
Stefan's great.
He's a Swede that lives in Chamonix and is a very accomplished guide and is just living this great life. And we had done a trip to Svalbard, and he said, hey man, you're welcome to go stay at my house. I'm going to be gone this summer. I go to Biarritz every summer. Come stay at my house. I'm like, are you really? Because I'll do it. And sure enough, I did. But as I'm planning this trip to go to Chamonix, the mecca of alpinism, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do with a 3-year-old daughter and my wife there? My wife and I could go climb some stuff, it'd be different than going with Nils or one of my buddies. Like, what am I going to do there? I don't know. We'll just make it work. Like you said, just kind of, let's figure it out. Well, we get there and I start kind of looking into the guidebooks and seeing, well, come to find out, because it's where it started, there are places everywhere that have these very easy, moderate routes that are bolted, that are easy, that are family friendly, kid friendly. And I was just blown away at how much of this very user friendly kind of lower risk type climbing that was available. It was just super inspired. So I came back from that trip and was talking to my buddy Chris McNamara, who had supertopos.com, written a lot of climbing books, 50, 60, 70 ascents of El Capitan, just a legend in climbing himself, one of my very closest friends. And we had done a lot of route development here together and worked on the guidebook for South Lake Tahoe together. And I was just like, man, we need that here. And he's like, yeah, man, that it makes sense. Like my guidebooks, people are looking for well-protected. That is a climb you can do that, you're not going to take big giant falls on because the protection's well spaced. So I started kind of looking at the rock differently and started going out some of these areas and going, man, there's a ton of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5, 10 climbing in this area, and started just putting the bolts in and doing it, putting the energy in and getting different friends to help and cutting the trail and getting things. And it just kept perpetuating to to, 150, maybe probably not 200 routes, but somewhere between 150 and that number of just bolted climbs. And it's been the most rewarding thing because it's really, if you go to like say Tuolumne Meadows has really good like granite dome climbing, but the nature, the ethics when it was put up at the time was more about the experience of the person putting it up and almost a statement to say, look at how good a climber I can climb all of this terrain without putting a bolt, without having protection. I'm willing to take a really long fall. And there's a rating system for that. It's like, the protection is pretty good. If you were to fall on this route, you could be injured because of the distance between protection. And then there's an X rating that says you could die on this route, like if you fall in the wrong place. And so the experience for the early climbers was definitely to make this statement. Look at how bold Miles was. He put this route up. God, dude, that route's so scary. I've done it. It's so hard. And those test pieces are still out there. But we just took this different approach of like, let's make it so these routes are well protected and you can go somewhere if you're a 5'6", 5'7" climber, 5'8" climber, and do it and learn the skills and get your skills up. So the bolt placements are more like what they have in some of these areas of Europe. Instead of what would happen climbing, you might clip a bolt on an area where you couldn't put other types of protection. You clip a bolt and you start climbing further and further away from it. The further away you climb from, the bigger your fall is going to be. And eventually you can just be like, fuck it. I can't, this is too much. I'm not willing to take this risk. I'm too scared. I'm stressed out, and you maybe you come back to the bolt and retreat off the climb or whatever. But we put the bolts in and this is how they've seen it throughout Europe in some of these areas that you clip one bolt and it's like, it's like a carrot. I can get to that next bolt, get up to the next bolt.
It's close.
Kind of see it's pretty close. Oh, it's scary. I clip it. Well, as soon as you clip it, you feel safe again because now the rope's real close to you. You're not going to fall
far.
You're not going to fall very far at all. And then get to the next one, and the next one. Next thing you're getting to the topper routes, and the next thing you're climbing harder routes, and the next thing you're able to go and do a route in Tuolumne that's 5'8", but has an R rating or has a big spacing because your confidence is good. You've built it up on these other routes, and it's been super rewarding. We developed an area, Luther Spires. That was before I went to Chamonix. And then when I came back, the big one, we put up about 25 routes in an area called Castle Rock, which is, you see from fucking State Line, Nevada, when you're at the casinos, you look up.
Nice.
I remember going there with Doug Workman was in town and we put up a route and I'm showing him, he's like, how is it that this place hadn't had routes on it before? And I'm like, no one was thinking about doing these easier grades.
Right.
Then we developed another area, Bear River Reservoir has some amazing climbs there. There's like 1,000-foot climb that's featured in this film, The Crux. It's like 900 and something feet. 5 pitches of like 5'8" climbing. And when I put it up, we put up with really spaced out, really scary bolt placements because we did it from the ground up, putting bolts in. Right. And then I've returned since and added a few bolts and made it a safer route. Then we put up like 50 pitches of rock climbing right here in my town of Myers, which is just on the outskirts of South Lake Tahoe. So, it all just starts adding up. But like I said, I go places and people are like, I love what you're doing at those places. It's so great. These old time climbers like Doug Robinson, who's featured in the film, he wrote the art of clean climbing. He was really staunch on the ethics of climbing, but he also recognized in some of these blank pieces of rock, you've got to place bolts. And now in his, elderly years, I ran into him and he's like, I love what you're doing. I love these routes. These are fun. I can enjoy them. They're safe. This is great. This is, and previously that rock was just not being climbed. So that's been really cool. There's been other people, the Chris McNamara, was real quick to say, hey, let me help you financially if you need money for the bolts, for the hangers that go on them, that you put a bolt in the wall
right.
with a power drill, and then you put an expansion bolt that goes in, and then there's a hanger that you can clip a quick draw in that connects to the rope. So he helped with some of that stuff. Some other people in the community, a bunch of people helped. It wasn't just me. My buddy Abe Greenspan, he helped me put up almost all 50 of those pitches in Myers. We just talk about having a good partner. It was like,
yes,
I got him involved. He lives in the same community neighborhood that I do. We walk to each other's house. And I was like, look, I'm telling you, this is an amazing opportunity. This summer, I'm putting up as many climbs in this area as I possibly can. You should be on board. There's not many places you can go 5-minute walk, 10-minute, 15-minute walk and start putting routes up. I'll buy the bolts. You just help. It's a lot of labor. It's not all fun. And he just manned up, and we just had the 2 summers of just putting up tons on Flagpole Peak and that whole area where the gun tower is in Myers that shoots up into that area clear the road 50 pitches and then still adding some more. It was an amazing experience that's been a really great addition to our community.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. I know the community loves it, and I'm really excited to learn more about it from this film. So the film's called The Crux. Where can we find out more about this film?
Intrepid are the ones that are putting it out. That's Stein, amazing guy. He's kind of the mastermind behind it, but it's Intrepid Film Festival. I'm going to host their film festival coming up here in Minnesota, my first trip to Minnesota. There'll be a sneak peek at this film and then several others, classic film. But Intrepid and I'm Tahoe Todd on Instagram. We'll put it out there, and it covers the most important thing in life to me that we talked about in the beginning of this podcast: the connection to family, friends, community, and purpose. That to me is what it encompasses, and that is from the heart and from the soul of me. It really is. Like it was weird. Like, hey, we're making a film about you. We want to. That's a weird concept if you're not, you're not a Tommy Caldwell or Alex Honnold. It makes sense then, but it spoke to my heart. That's from my heart and soul that the happiest people are connected to those four things.
It is the formula for happiness. It is those four things. And that, to me, especially that being connected to your community and having the purpose, that is huge. In your life, in many of our lives, we have these powerful breakthrough moments, your moments of clarity, moments where, if you will, the screen is kind of lifted in front of your eyes and you can see the light, you can see what you truly want, where you want to go and how you can get there. What breakthrough moments have you had in your life? I assume with all these your life has been so different, so many different things. I'm just curious to hear what your perspective is on breakthrough moments.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is losing people that I was close to, whether it was my mom passing away, or losing friends in the mountains, or even the couple experiences that I had where like in the Crevasse Fall, where I said calmly in my mind, oh, this is how I die. I think those are huge breakthroughs of realizing that you have this certain amount of time on this planet, and it helped me to really define like what it is I really want to be doing with my life. Because life to me really is, it's just, you get a certain amount of time. We don't know how much it is. It's incredible how quickly it can be changed, whether it's through an MRI that reveals some horrible type of cancer, or some accident in the mountains, or a traffic accident. It happens so quick that things can change. That I think those experiences made me really realize how important never wasting a day is. And that was a breakthrough of just not sweating the small stuff. Nothing just seems like a big deal to me, like when I just put it in perspective of, like I said, all those days I've got to live since those accidents. But I think those type of instances, can either maybe really mess you up. I think PTSD is a real thing that we're getting more awareness about people, how those things can affect you. And a lot of different things can cause it, childhood traumas, whatever. Or you can take those things too. In my case, I feel like I was able to take those and turn them into something really positive to just change my life. And just, not that I wasn't living my life, but I had a better perspective on just how precious it is.
That is really a special and unique, spectacular way to look at it. When you said, I don't sweat the small stuff as much anymore, that's what happened to me when my brother passed away. I was 19, he was 13, happened skiing. It was actually a heart-related issue. And since then, I don't think I sweat the small stuff very much before then, naturally. But my goodness, do I not sweat the small stuff now. Right? I have to tell people, especially, if I'm dating somebody or I get close to somebody, I have to tell them, I have to say, listen, it's important for you to know, because of, my breakthrough, one of my breakthrough moments in life, I really don't sweat the small stuff. So I might not notice something that's important to you. So you need to let me know, because
it's a good way to do it.
It helps, because I've had a lot of problems with it too. It's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
So when you said that really struck a chord with me. And I love your perspective on all that. Tell us a little bit about your Tahoe Adventure Film Festival. I believe you started this in 2003. And I've been to it. It's awesome. It's truly one of a kind. Nobody else does it like this. It's got a lot of quirky aspects to it. When I went, there was go-go dancers and little people, and like almost a variety show that went alongside with it. So tell me about the Adventure Film Festival. Why you started it, and where you're going with it.
It was one of those things, like, again, moving to the mountain community. I think I went to like a Banff Film Festival tour that went through town.
Oh,
Whether
yeah.
it was here, Mammoth, I hadn't been around. And remember too, that was probably 25 years ago. We didn't have the same access to all the film and all the exciting stuff and Netflix, and you had to rent a video, you had to watch TV. So I remember going to that thing and seeing this collection of these films and just being so inspired in mountain sports. And
it works.
it works. Base jumping, skiing, climbing. And I always thought, man, we need one of those in Tahoe. We need one of those in Tahoe. And every time it would come to town, I'd go to it. But I couldn't help, and this is just me, and I'm not in any way putting down the Banff Film Festival. It's one of the greatest film festivals in the world, in my opinion. But I would go to that one, and I'd watch this film on base jumping and be inspired, and watch this film on climbing and be inspired, and watch something else. And then they'd show a film, not that it's not important, but they'd show a film on the rainforest, and the planet's dying in the rain. Like, oh man, it kind of brought me down. I was all feeling good. And I was like, what if we just had a film festival that was all just uplifting? It was just celebrating and getting fired up. And so I had torn my quadricep off my knee in a ski accident. I forgot to mention that one. And during that downtime, I didn't have that purpose of going out and doing the things that I enjoy. Being a climber, being a skier is a big part of my identity. And that was missing. And I thought, man, I got to turn this around. This is what depression, I'm sure, feels like coming on. I better get off your ass and put together this film festival. So I went and got some films together. Back then it was like DVDs, talked to some filmmakers. Went to the Lake Tahoe Community College, put on a film festival, had Shane McConkey come. Oh. And he was a speaking component of it that came up. And he's like, all right, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about, because that was when he was really getting into the ski base jumping early. It's like maybe 2002 or something like that, 2002 or 3. So we showed a film about that. It was like some of the early ski base jumping stuff that he was doing. And then we had Rick Sylvester, who was the original ski base jumper.
Legend.
The legend.
James Bond movie, ski base jumps off Mount Ascar in Baffin Island. In the 70s. Whoa. We had him come. And so Shane got out there, started talking about base jumping and ski base jumping. And then we had Rick was like in a straight jacket in the audience, and we brought him up because Rick's just a wild dude. And that was cool. And then we showed a bunch of films. And then right after that, I knew some people over at Mont Bleu, and a guy reached out in the marketing and said, hey man, why don't you bring that film festival to Mont Bleu? And it kind of I was kind of taken back. I don't know if it's that big a thing. He's like, we can make it big. Like, people loved it. And so we took it there. And then I think we the first year, you have films. So you got this big auditorium, great showroom at Mont Bleu here in Lake Tahoe. It's the biggest showroom in town, in all of Tahoe. But it's like, Elvis performed there, you name it. Like everybody's, the Rat Pack performed there. Everybody's been on the stage, the tiered seating there, and a beautiful stage with a stage crew. And we're just having the films play. But in that time between, like when the doors open and the films play, I'm like, we need some sort of ambiance in the room. And I just I want to make this thing, I don't want to be like another film festival. I want this thing to be quirky and crazy. So we started hiring like little people, midgets, dwarfs to come and dance around and hand out stuff. And then at the time there was a drag queen show at one of the casinos. We had like the one that was the MC host for the drag show. His name was Gypsy. And he was just great. He came and I said, let's do this whole shtick the whole time that you're my old wrestling coach from high school. And so I had this whole thing about, it was so good. I got my wrestling coach to come out again. And, he's here in town, and it's Gypsy, and, he's dressed up in all sequins, white sequin, flowy tons
dress.
Of makeup.
And would totally do like the drag queen, like, girly kind of voice, and then turn right around and look at you the other way and be like, all right, hey, tell me, Todd, like about your wrestling, with a cigar or something. It was just great. Yeah. So we just made it quirky, and the whole idea, and then it turned into getting go-go dancers in there, because there's a lot of go-go dancers that work at the casinos, work in the clubs. There's a lot of really talented dancers in the South Lake community related to the casinos and the shows and so on. So we started recruiting some of them just to create ambiance in the room from that time the doors open to when the films start. And it's just been a hit. And it also plays to what a quirky, unique place South Lake Tahoe is. You've got a ski community where there's everywhere from Squaw and Alpine and Sugar Bowl to Mount Rose to Kirkwood to Heavenly, all these ski resorts, this amazing lake, and then world-class entertainment that comes to these casinos, a venue set up for some of the best comics, some of the best music, some of the best. So we tried to kind of tie it all into this quirky, crazy, funny, we're unique South Lake Tahoe thing. And it's been really well received. We raised money for the Sierra Avalanche Center, which I've been on the board now for probably 13 or 14 years. Definitely it morphed from being about extremes in action adventure sports, talked about the lack of diversity in mountain sports and mountain film, the lack of women athletes being represented.
The year I went was the woman-focused year. It was really special. Jamie Anderson was there and more.
That's right. She won the Golden Camelot. We give an award every year. But we've kind of morphed in between all those things, just in noticing with films, those things, and bring it to the attention and talk about it and make light of some things and raise a glass for our friends that have passed away in the mountains. And it really has become just a celebration of our mountain communities, our connection through action and adventure sports.
Well, congratulations. I can testify that it is a really, really fantastic good time. How can our listeners find out more about it?
We're Tahoe Adventure Film Festival.com, but our next one, it will be January 8th. We typically do it the middle of December, but with the pandemic, we moved it back January 8th at Mont Bleu in South Lake Tahoe, but adventurefilmfestival.com. And then we do tour stops to Petaluma and Mammoth and Jackson and Salt Lake. We've been all over just bringing the same positive message. There's mountain communities. We're so connected in these mountain communities, right?
Absolutely.
I couldn't figure it when I first moved here. I'm like, why? People are so connected in these communities. They raise money for each other when people need help or help each other. But the friendships are tighter than the friendships as an overall community grew up around. And I started realizing, I think it's these sports we do, like when you go out and climb together and hold a rope for each other, you're really trusting your life with someone else. When you go backcountry skiing, you're counting on your partner, and those create different bonds than if we were just playing golf against each other or playing tennis against each other, which are great sports. But I think the bonds are different. We're not really competing in these mountain sports. We're doing them together, counting on each other. And the bonds that it creates in these mountain communities is very unique. And that's a big part of what the film festival is about, and the messaging when we go to these other towns.
Agreed. I think the bonds that we create in these mountain sports are more akin to the bonds that soldiers create than to regular people in regular sports. I know about that, and I love it. And I think soldiers have it to even an nth degree.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's even stronger.
I think that's why I'm drawn to reading about those stories and that sort of stuff. The bonds and the bravery and especially, like I say, those special operations books. I just love get the mission done no matter what. And the mountains are that way often.
Absolutely. Well, let's hit your mountain guiding really quick. How did you get into mountain guiding? How did this happen for you?
I had done a little bit of guiding back on the East Coast through rock climbing, and then coming out here had done just a pretty limited amount. And then Kip Gar, was a good friend of ours who's passed away, he had gone on the Antarctica trip. We were hanging out climbing and skiing and doing some stuff together. He was like, dude, you got to get on this Antarctica trip, I'm like, well, yeah, but I haven't really done much ski guiding stuff. He's like, yeah, but dude, you've skied all over the place. You've guided, you can recognize the line, you see the path, you've got all the skill sets there. You're great with people. I'm like, well, he's like, yeah, got to meet this guy, Doug Stout. I got to introduce you. So we went out and went and skied above Fallen Leaf Lake together and met Doug. And
nice.
I just started, saying, Doug, I'd really like to go on this trip. I'm telling you, I'll be that guy that'll show up and, whatever needs to be done, I'll take care of it. I'll get it done. I'll be that guy that takes care of the clients. I'll make sure people are happy. I'll do a great job. Like if I see something that's out of place, I'll fix it. You invite me once, you will have to invite me back every year. I'm going to be that guy. And I did. I got invited, thanks to Doug Staub, an amazing opportunity there to go to Antarctica. I'd never been before, and basically just on-site guide down there, you can look at a mountain and go, this is the safest way up it. This is the safest way down. Mountains are mountains. It doesn't matter where they are. I mean, they all have their different nuances, but traveling in the mountains, it's the same techniques you use anywhere. And got invited on that. And every time they had, hey, we need someone to volunteer to do the weather ops. I'll volunteer for that. We need someone to volunteer to set up the landing zones. I volunteer for that. And that was how I got involved. And it has been the funnest, coolest job opportunity. The people I meet, the places we've been, the experiences we've had is unlike any other job, any other thing. I just absolutely love working with ISAX Expeditions. I love the people that come on those trips. I love all the different guides, the amount of time on an Antarctica trip that you have to be with, close to 20 different guides from around the world, having oftentimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner around the same table, sharing stories, sharing knowledge, sharing experience, working together. How would you do this? How would you do it different? Guide meetings. It's almost like going to a small little university. And, if you treat it that way, there's a lot of information you can pull out of these trips from the people that are on, including the guests.
Some of my other guiding experiences were more competitive. This one's so much more synergistic. Everybody's from such a different place and they all want to, get together and share and really help each other get better. And I love that about it.
I do too. Made so many friends on those trips, from the guests to the guides to the staff on the boat.
Oh yeah. Edward and all those guys on the boat are fantastic. Might you have any funny or interesting stories from your guiding experience?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, here's a good one. I know you've enjoyed my presentations on the boat.
Oh, your slideshows are out of this world.
Yeah. So we do these, you go on these trips, and another great component aside from skiing in Antarctica and crossing the Drake Passage and being around all these great guides and guests is you get to see all these great presentations, everything from the staff on the boat, the biologists teaching you about the penguins, to the geologists teaching you about the land mass of Antarctica, to all this stuff, to then people like Chris Davenport giving a presentation on skiing Mount Everest, to Andrew McLean, his years in the mountains. It's endless, the amount of great presentations. And my first year, again, out of nowhere, Doug Stout, the owner of ISAC, says, would you do a presentation on the boat? And I just said yes. And because I like doing presentations, I do a pretty solid presentation. It's different. It's got a lot of humor.
It's really funny.
And all of a sudden I became so intimidated. I'm like, I got back to the room with my roommate, Andrew Eisenstark, and I was like, dude, what am I going to do? What am I going to talk about? Like these guys have all done, guys have skied off the top of Everest. These guys have done, they've been all over the world. Like what? It's like, man, dude, just be yourself, Tio. Just be yourself. Like And so I went up there. That was when my presentation changed on that trip.
Oh,
it not that it was about before, I did this, I did that, but it was like telling stories. Oh, I went to the Bugaboos and I went to Pakistan and did this. Oh, we skied here and did that. It was like, I started out just going, look, I'm not that guy. I'm not this pro guy that's here, but I figured out a formula that just makes it so fun. Here's the key. Don't complain, but whatever you do, don't show up on that morning and go, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep up. You're probably a lot fat. Don't say that. Just zip your lips, shut the fuck up. Don't say anything. Hey, you're getting a blister on your foot. Don't mention you got a blister on your foot. You're cold. Everybody else is cold. Whatever you do, just shut. Don't say a word. Don't complain. Whatever you do, don't complain. Because when you're done at the end of the day and you get back to the boat and you pull your ski boot off and everybody sees this big bloody blister on your heel, they're like, oh my God, dude, you didn't say it. Yeah, whatever. It'll be fine. People go, oh man, he's tough. We got to invite him back. He's fun. He doesn't complain. You get to the top of the peak and it took you longer than anybody else and you're sweating and they could tell you're hurting. You get up there and you don't say, man, that was hard. You just go, this is awesome. This is, it's blowing 40 miles an hour sideways. I know, isn't it great? You can't see. I know. I ski best when I can't see. Just be positive. Fake it. And then all of a sudden you start getting invited back. And that power of not complaining is a big part of the presentation. And we've turned it into on the boat now. It's become more popular to do that my presentation earlier on because the clients get so much out of not complaining. I'll be at dinner in the evening. They'll be like, I was thinking about what you said about not complaining. I'm like, good job. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for that. So I wanted to talk to you today about avalanches. I ask every guest that comes on the show because I think there's so much to learn here. So have you ever been in an avalanche and what happened?
I have personally been in one avalanche. I've been witness to multiple and, with fatalities and all of that stuff. But I've personally only been caught in one avalanche personally. And it was on Mount Tallac in the Cross maybe 5 years ago.
I remember I skied that the next day.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. So you could see the crown in it and the whole bit.
And the debris and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. So, but continue. It's a great story.
Yeah, that was a crazy one. I, looked at the avalanche forecast like I always do. I was going with a kid who I'd met on a trip, Henry, who was on one of our Svalbard trips as kind of an apprentice, helping cook and do all this stuff. And he'd never been to Tahoe. We went up there. We were doing little test slopes on the way up, checking the snow for snow stability like you do typically in the mountains. And everything was indicating things were good to go. And we got up, and the most iconic line off Mount Tallac is the cross. It's a line that goes right down the center. It's a steep line, exposed and
gorgeous.
You see it from town everywhere. It's just iconic. And it had tracks in it. Some friends of ours, Glenn Polson and John Morrison, had skied it before us. I didn't see them there, but found out later it was their tracks. There was maybe 6 or 7 tracks in it. And it maybe snowed like about 2 inches up high was all. And so it was a little bit of new snow. And then it was that kind of snow, spring snow. It was about the 3rd week of March, where you could ski cut and the snow would release from the bottom of your skis. So you could kind of go in and that was what the test slopes were indicating. And I knew we could ski a fresher line. It'd been just enough to like kind of reset the snow, spring kind of conditions, reset the snow. I was like, we could ski this other line. There's no tracks in it at all. I'm like, but it's up to you. This is the most iconic line probably in Tahoe. The cross is one that, even resort skiers will come up in the spring and boot up it and ski it for a long time. He's like, I want to ski that one. I'm like, cool. I'm like, it looks good to me. Everything's, I had very little concern. It was cold enough that day that I even was skiing down with my puffy on. It was very cold at the top, but had a light cloud cover as well. So I misjudged the ambient air temperature, and the effect of that cloud cover was in fact allowing sun to get through and into this bowl that forms the top part. There's a bowl at the top above very exposed terrain, and then a very tight chute couloir that it runs down and then opens up into a big apron below it. I did all my checks, and then right before I went to ski, I thought, is there anything I'm missing? I think this in my head every time. And then the only thing I did, and this is a big one that I pass on to people, is just what I do. If I am worried about avalanche conditions, getting caught in an avalanche, I'll put the tabs on my Dynafit Solomon type bindings in the ski mode. If it's firm conditions and I do not want my skis to come off, I'll typically pull the tabs up. And steep terrain, this is steep terrain, you don't want your skis coming off. But I thought in the event of an avalanche, whenever I'm in avalanche terrain, then I'm like, I'll put those tabs down so my skis would come off of my feet. And I skied in, giving it the big ski cut that I was planning on. It was releasing the way I thought it would from the bottom of my skis. And then I made a jump turn to come back across where I had just kind of ski cut a little bit. It was just sloughing. And when I made that jump turn, the whole entire bowl ripped out. Whoa. And I was immediately just in this violent whitewash of snow and debris and getting pummeled. And all I could think was I wanted my skis off, just intuitively, those propellers on your feet when you're getting tossed. And I'm shooting down in this violent, my mouth was getting packed with snow. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was airborne. I could just feel myself shot up into the air. And I know there's some big cliffs below. And it was another one of those like, wow, 1001, 1002. It was a long time in the air.
Damn. And
I was like, this is not going to be good. I've gone off something really big. And then somehow when I landed on my backpack, solid on my backpack, in the debris, in this pile of snow, came out of it, and kind of an apron of snow at the bottom that I started kind of coming to the surface a little bit. I ended up about 900 feet down the slope, missing both skis. I'd broken one ski. My poles were gone. I mean, I was pretty beat up. That kid was still at the top. I was yelling to him that I was okay. And I couldn't get communication with him. So I picked up my phone. I tried to dial him. He didn't answer. So then I was kind of concerned. He was in a safe spot, but my brain went to, oh man, I got to go into search mode now. Like maybe I can't assume he's okay. And I started going up, and then eventually I kept yelling, and eventually he started coming down. He knew it was safe to go on top of the bed surface. He brought my broken ski down to me, and I skied out pretty beat up and tail between my legs, and I felt a lot of shame and embarrassment. And I felt, again, really lucky to have survived and not been really seriously injured. But I put all of that aside. And I think this is a really important message too, to put all that aside. And I immediately reported it to the Sierra Avalanche Center as an observation. Yep. And we got a report out. We added pictures to it. We wanted other people to be aware of that, kind of sharing that information and overriding your own ego and shame and all the things I was experiencing was important, because I know people have incidents, and because of those reasons, they don't share it with the community. And I think that's a big part of what we have to do is be careful to not shame people reporting it. It's easy in hindsight to be like, oh, that idiot, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start doing that, you're not learning. I think it's important to sit back and listen. Here's all the things that led to making those decisions. And then this happened. There's really good takeaways in that, like the Ascents in North America that the American Alpine Journal puts out every year is great at debriefing and analyzing accidents, what happened, how they could have been prevented. And we can all learn from those.
There's so much to learn in all this, and including your story. Thank you for sharing. And the shame thing is huge. When I had my first avalanche in January 2020, and the first thought or reaction in my head was, how do we hide this?
Interesting, right?
It was the first thing in my head. And I even told my friend, I was like, okay, let's not tell anybody. But of course, when I got home, I reported it and I wrote an article about it. I published my video about it. And the Utah Avalanche Center even used it. It was on Mount Superior in Utah, even used it in their presentation in the following fall, because there was a lot to learn there. And so I think that's the key. We got to all, not be rude or judgmental to people who are in avalanches. And we all need to have, be able to bury that shame.
Learn from it
and share it. Absolutely.
Did you find it helped you process a lot of it by sharing it and writing about it and, debriefing and realizing where mistakes were made?
Very much so.
Yeah,
and I've been lucky enough, like you, to actually, on one of my podcasts last year, I had the Utah Avalanche director and the Colorado Avalanche director both walk me through what happened, because I shared the story, shared the video, and they both were like, hey, here's what you should have done better. And the big takeaway for me and everybody was, you should have ski cut that slope.
Yeah.
And you didn't. And why didn't you? And was there a good place to do it? So now I'm like a ski cut machine now. Yeah. Everywhere I go, I was like, hold on, I'm going to ski cut it first. You're like, dude, we're at squaw. Okay, you're right.
That's experience.
But yeah, totally. So those things go a long way. So climate change, Todd, it's changing, who we are, what we do, and especially changing winter, how long we have snow on the ground, where we can go skiing. It's very impactful for us as winter sports athletes. So what evidence of climate change have you seen in your lifetime?
I don't honestly know how to answer that because I'm not a scientist. I make observations. And, in the 30 plus years I've been running around the mountains, I've seen glaciers recede in the Bugaboos and glaciers recede and go away in the Sierra Nevada. I'm seeing in the past 25 years here in the Sierra, which is a very short period of time I've been skiing, have seen snow levels rise a little bit, from historic numbers. And then of course, we've had some drought years and some warm years. And, I think I might just be such an optimist. Sometimes I'm like, there's like a pretty small little window that I'm looking at. So I don't feel like I have a lot to contribute. People always ask that, like with the Antarctica and the Arctic trips. And I think in the 10, 12 years I've been going there, that's not a time frame to look at and analyze any real change, if it's positive or negative. But, I'm reading all the same articles that everyone else is. And I'm an optimist. I like to think too that, we're going to get through it. I see a lot of people working hard, a lot of smart people working hard to change some of the behavioral stuff we're doing, some of the, resources that we're using to maybe change that. But, I'm an optimist. And I think, always kind of cracks me up, like, when it's really hot out and people say, yeah, it's just climate change, or it snows a whole lot. And people go, see, climate change, global warming, my ass, it's a huge ski season. I just laugh at that and go, I'll leave it to the scientists, the people that know better. I think most of us in these mountain towns are recycling and doing whatever it is we can do to try to, make our footprint a little bit smaller if that's going to help. But I think we'll figure it out. I think we're pretty smart on this planet, and there's some pretty smart people working on it, and I trust in them. It's like when I get on an airplane, it's like I'm not worried about, and I just like I'm on for the ride.
Yeah. Well, I always appreciate your optimism, and it always is uplifting, and you have a good contagious effect with that optimism. Why do you live in Lake Tahoe? You can live anywhere on Earth, and you've clearly chosen Lake Tahoe from the East Coast. Why did you choose Tahoe?
I absolutely love Lake Tahoe. The longer I'm here, the more I love it. I think that balance of being in the mountains, for one, this amazing mountain community, which, if it was somewhere else, it would be another mountain community. I think what makes this particular mountain community so unique is the amount of ski resorts we have here, the weather, the incredible snowpack that we have in the Sierras, this maritime snowpack, historically big snow years with clear weather, amazing rock climbing. Then, you take, I think there's a lot of different boxes you can check to what makes a ski town the best ski town. Chamonix, when it comes to access and rad mountains and skiing and climbing, they got that box checked. We've got part of that box. Maybe, if they get a 5 out of 5 on that, maybe we get a 3 or 4 out of 5 on that box. But then when it comes to entertainment, for all the bullshit that the casinos have in Tahoe, they bring some of the best stand-up comics in the world here. They bring some of the best music, outdoor concerts in the world here that we get to experience that. We have an improv comedy club. How many ski towns can you go and see, improv, really good stand-up comedy, or go see a really good show? Then in the summertime, we have all the same mountain sports, maybe arguably more climbing than a lot of areas, all the same mountain sports that other mountain towns have. But we have this incredible lake on this end of the lake, South Lake, we have these incredible sandy beaches. Last night I was out having dinner on a friend's boat with my wife and another couple, just watching the sunset from the lake. That is incredible. We have access to international airports. To me, no matter where I go in the world, the most amazing places on the planet that we travel to, when I come home and come up over that rim and see Lake Tahoe, I'm just so proud to be from here and wouldn't rather live anywhere else in the whole world.
That's a mic drop right there. Fantastic. So the last question, Todd, is what's next for you? What's next for you and your journey?
I think I'm just pressing on with this fatherhood thing. I've got a 9-year-old daughter. Just continue climbing. Yeah, thank you. It's been wonderful. It's a totally different chapter in skiing and climbing on a lot of levels. Climbing as a family has been just incredibly rewarding. When I had a kid, my first thoughts were, I'm probably going to ski and climb less. And I do. But when I do go climb or to go skiing, it means more. It's really just amazing to do it as a family. We've got one of those classic camper vans. So the whole lifestyle that's around these trips, the places we go to, the camping, the time together, the one-on-one, the lessons that the mountains can teach us that apply to all aspects of life, the spatial awareness, the situational awareness. I have this thing that I've come up with climbing with my daughter and then teaching some kids classes here on climbing, of saying, kids will say, in climbing, I'm really scared. I'm scared. I'm like, okay. Is what you're doing right now, is it scary or is it dangerous? And they go, well, it's really scary. And I'm like, is it dangerous though? Because you have a rope and you've got an anchor and you've got a belayer, or is it just scary? Oh, the wind's blowing really hard. It's making it scarier. Yeah, it's scarier. But is it dangerous? Oh, hey, we're walking along this ledge system without ropes on. This is scary. Is it dangerous? Yeah, if I fell here, it could get out of control. And I like teaching that. That's like one thing I've learned, like having a daughter, is that. So I just want to continue that path of just trying to be a good dad and have these amazing family experiences and create these amazing memories for myself, my daughter, my wife. Continue putting up some of these moderate climbs around Tahoe. I just ordered a bunch more bolts and hangers and been out kind of doing reconnaissance, trying to find some more areas for that. I want to do some more trips, want to continue guiding, want to stay healthy, want to continue with the film festival, bringing that to the community. Doing a little bit more before the pandemic started. I was doing a little bit more public speaking. I'd done some stuff with Charles Schwab Group, the financial group, and kind of that inspirational, but mostly just funny, lighthearted. People enjoy just a good show that just celebrates this amazing life that we're all blessed to have, and not taking it for granted and just never wasting a day. So I think the future is that just not wasting days, really realizing how important each one is and taking advantage.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your amazing life with us here today, Todd. That's all I've got for you. Do you have any more thoughts? Any thoughts you'd like to share here at the end of the show? Yeah,
people can hit me up, Tahoe Todd on Instagram. Try to post some fun pictures, some comedy. It's all lighthearted stuff. And also just how much I appreciate what you're doing. The Snow Brains, the website, I look at it regularly in the ski season. Like I said, I play a lot of the video clips on the TV show, the Lake Tahoe TV.
So thank you, Todd. I appreciate that, man. It means a lot to me.
I appreciate you.
It was great talking to you today. Yeah, I appreciate you as well. Thanks so much for being here, and have a great day, man.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snow Brains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about Snow Brains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Snowbrains. Today's Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Tamarack Resort. For the free spirits that hear the call of the undiscovered and believe the future truly is boundless, Tamarack Resort is the place for you. And we can't wait to welcome you with arms wide open. Find it together at tamarackidaho.com. Today's episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Pico Mountain. Big mountain skiing and riding meets small mountain charm at Vermont's Pico Mountain. Ski or ride Pico this season and save up to 57% off the ticket window rate when you purchase My Pico 3-packs. My Pico 3-packs give you 3 days of skiing and riding for one low price. Use them yourself or share with friends, but be sure to get them before they're gone. My Pico 3-packs are only available through December 16th. Learn more at picomountain.com. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Jared White. Music by Chad Crouch. And I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.